Apple Knocker Radio.
Greetings, friends. I'm a big fan of horror movies, horror fiction, horror poetry. I don't know why. I probably shouldn't pump so much of that stuff into my brain, but I am. I really like it. I still think of all the horror fiction, poetry, everything that I've read, there's never been any single line creepier. It's actually from the Bible, believe it or not. But Mark 5:9, which goes, "And Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' He replied, 'My name is Legion, for we are many.'" That's creepy. Now you try writing a single line without any other context that can be that unnerving in just that one sentence. It's pretty brilliant if you think about it. The full story is about a guy who's possessed by demons. Jesus goes to whoop some of that demonic ass. And and so then when he's addressing Legion, he says, "My name is Legion, for we are many." I just find that so creepy. And the title of this video is kind of an allusion to that. But what we're going to talk about is not demonic possession. What we're going to talk about instead is the latest commentaries of Maurice Nicoll and a psychological commentary on the teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. I've been covering them almost every day. And I've been reading them every day and then trying to cover them every day. But I'm trying to balance that because I'm trying to do something of value for you because this is very valuable for me. The best way to learn is to teach, right? So I like going over these things and putting them together in my mind so that I can then explain them on here. It helps me a lot. But at the same time, I don't want to waste any of your time. So I'm trying to balance this all out, right? But today, this is one that's absolutely incredibly beneficial. And so a core concept of the fourth way is this idea that none of us are, or that the vast majority of humanity, we are not actually cohesive individuals. We are a collection of many individuals in our minds. These are many psychic personalities that you've developed throughout your life. And now, if you're like somebody with a hermetic worldview or stuff, then this worldview or something, then this gets even more interesting because you can start talking about like these energetic bodies living within. But we'll keep it purely psychological for now, for simplicity's sake. And so, is this idea that we develop all these different psychic personalities inside of our minds, and that these psychic personalities are taking turns, taking control of us throughout the day. But the thing is, we don't we don't see that. We identify with all of these various psychic beings as ourselves. We think it's us, not understanding all the time that it's not. Now, there is a core there is a core you, there is a core to all of us. But in the fourth way teaching, and I think this will bear up if you're honest with yourself, the idea is that most human beings live unconsciously and are at the whim constantly of these various psychic beings inside of our brains who we mistake for ourselves. And I know that sounds like a really weird idea, but you can see it in very simple things that happen to you in your life. Like, have you ever gotten into an argument with somebody and the argument escalates and you've got to win this argument. Like, it feels like the whole world depends on you winning this argument. And then the second something happens to where the argument stops or just the argument drifts apart, 2 seconds later you look back and you do not know why you cared, right? Like, you realize it wasn't even a subject you care that much about. It's not a person whose opinion really matters to you. And it's a situation in which even if you did win the argument, it would be basically completely irrelevant. It had no actual functional outcome. And then you look back and there's kind of that feeling like, who was that person, right? Well, to the fourth way teachings, that person literally wasn't you, because it's a new you that has come in, and that other you that had stepped in, that had been triggered into action by this scenario. Like, different scenarios trigger these different psychic components of your mind, right? And so then that, as different situations trigger, it comes in, and then that's you, right? Like, you think that's you. It fully possesses you. You completely identify with it. You think that you are this psychic shard in your brain, but you're not. And now that's a concept that when you encounter the fourth way, it's the core concept of the fourth way. So it's one that I read years ago, have been very familiar with, and I think there's a ton of truth to it. I think it's very useful. But there was an aspect in this commentary that I had never picked up on before. That was an extra layer. Like, wow, man, this was powerful. Because then the universe gave me a gift shortly after that I'm going to get into. I believe it was like a gift, you know. I believe if you work really hard at these things, you know, you have these long periods in the desert where it's like, what am I doing? Why don't I just not care about this and just enter the orb of the rest of humanity and stop thinking about these things, right? And then right when you get into that point, it's, you know, every once in a while the universe is like, boom, here's a little bit of reward for your hard work. Here's an insight. Here's a zap. Here's some inspiration. You know, it's like one of those things. But and so what Nicoll talks about was, he mentioned. Sorry. I'm very tired today. This is going to be good though. And so what Nicoll said was that these beings, not only do these things exist, which is an idea that I've been accustomed to for a while, but these things have their own like will for self-preservation, their own will to survive. And so while you are in the middle of working on yourself and you're trying to achieve these psychological and spiritual this growth, right? These other beings, they're threatened by it because they know that if you achieve this illumination, I like to refer to it as illumination. People have different concepts and words for it. They know that if you can achieve this illumination, it means they're dead, they're gone, right? Because once you integrate yourself, all of these other psychic little puppet masters inside, they're going to get thrown out, right? They're going to get extinguished completely or completely subjugated. And so Nicoll talked about how these various beings, for their own survival, they will fight. And it was amazing, man, because just after that, right, I was going through some spiritual practices that I won't talk about because it's just personal. And in the middle of it, this happens to me often, right? Like really often. I started thinking about this stupid stuff that I did when I was like 14, 15, like stupid little things that I said to like hurt people's feelings and stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fallible person. I have done things that legitimately were wrong that I am always trying to redeem myself for, right? But also a lot of things are just stupid, like hurting somebody's feelings or something, like things that you do not need to be dwelling on 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, right? And yet they'll pop in. But man, it was an amazing experience because I'm there doing my meditations, doing my practices, and this thing comes in. I start thinking about this thing that happened when I was young, and I feel really guilty, right? Now, when this comes in, it's not just that it comes in as it's a reminder, right? I begin to identify with it, and that's always what happens. But this time I caught myself. Right? This time I was like, wait a minute. I'm identifying with this thing. And the fascinating thing is I realized that it's not just, it's this like guilt being, right? This shamed guilt being. But what I realized was that it's not just guilt, because I also realized that my self-talk, when that happens, my self-talk becomes very adolescent, right? It's like a 14-year-old is in my head. And it was a powerful realization because I understood it was just like Nicoll talked about. That guilt being, it's not just guilt. Like, I have thought about it in the past and just thought it's this like floating guilt thing. But it's its own person. And I'm saying that because it's multi-dimensional. Like, it wasn't just guilt. There's also this adolescence, like adolescent self-talk that comes in when this comes in. Now, I'm really not into talking about my like personal life like this. I'm sharing this because I think it's a concrete way to conceptualize what I'm talking about and why this is so important, right? So it's not just guilt. It's its own being. Like, it has its own personality, right? It is a person living inside my head, right? And man, it was intense, because you can read about this stuff and you can think about it abstractly and conceptually, but then when you actually experience it and to see it, it was intense, man. And it was an incredible gift. But anyway, and so the whole idea of this fourth way, and I can't remember if I said this earlier, but I like to reiterate this all the time. These fourth way teachings, you don't have to become like a fourth way convert. These teachings, they're very profound, and you can apply them to any other path that you want to walk. I'm sure there are other people in the fourth way who would disagree with me, and that's fine. And also, let me be clear, I am absolutely not trying to pass myself off as a fourth way guru or any kind of spiritual guru at all. Just the dude who has spent a lot of time practicing these things, reading these things, studying these things, and trying to understand them. I've still got a long road ahead of me, man, and I'm no guru, right? I'm neither a fourth way guru nor just a generic guru. But anyway, it's just kind of a thing when you're making videos like this and talking about these topics. Like you don't want to come across that way, because that's not how I'm thinking about it. And so that's it. That is the epiphany. That was the amazing part from this commentary from Maurice Nicoll. It was very powerful, and this is a very useful thing to think about, and you can apply to your own life. If you can begin to see that there are these floating personalities inside your mind that you think are you and they're not. If you can see it, I actually see it and experience it, then you can begin to understand what the problem is and what you need to do to integrate it, right? And so that's about it. I just thought it was really useful and something I wanted to talk about. So all right, peace out, everybody.